And that's the story. It is described by the three evangelists, but with different, let's just say, variations, but the essence is one and the same for friends. Take stretcher. And on these stretchers they bring their paralyzed friend to the place where Christ is preached, namely, to the house. And here in this house is the healing of this man. How does it happen? That's what's interesting. The fact is that we practically, in Iwang, we don't find words that this sick person would say. That is, he practically says nothing. It happens that a person is paralyzed, can't just talk physically. And that's why. Therefore, get tired of him performing his friends. And here we are when we open the interpretation to this place. A lot of symbolic interpretations for this place, but the truth itself, the Gospels and the truth of this itself, the unskillful story is. What is this story? Well, on what? This love story. And how? Love. God and people's love can work wonders. Interesting in this story. What? First of all, Christ heals this man. Not disease heals immediately, but heals in the beginning in it. Rather sin. Discord line, conflict line. He says he forgives you your sins. But the thing is that there are different people in this crowd. And those who, gentlemen, listened with awe. And those people who were looking for some clue, what it could be cured of. And in the end, they cured him. Remember what Christ was judged for. Here's literally, for what? In the court of Christ. And take him out. What for? What sentence? Him. Let's remember. Rule that is, for blasphemy. Blasphemed in blasphemy. Here are the people who are scribes and Pharisees. They searched to include Christ in the chastisement. They found. Eventually they found this lead, and in the end, he was intoxicated in it. Among other things, yes, there were political expectations. Yes, there were some unjustified hopes for that. Christ will come and feed everyone. And elevate this Jewish people, and put it above all. That's an old dream. To Israelis, Jews to their world empire. She didn't go anywhere. And sometimes that's really, we have a very short memory. Sometimes it happens. What are you reading? Comments. That's where Jews are doing something there. Yes. Here they have an institute of temples. There's something they're trying. Restore. They are trying to build a temple, their third. They make their sacrifice offerings. Yes. Buy. They train. It's true. But when you read comments of modern people young, not very young, do you understand how tonic people are in cultural historical, so to speak, your understanding process? They don't understand that it all went nowhere. The history of mankind and its religious history. She goes on. Not doing anywhere is history. They look at that cow, which is burned at the stake, and they say, what savagery we are right now. In the 21st century, what is happening? Nothing happens. Everything happens. What was not happening? We live in this historical process. If we don't understand him, then it's worse for us. Christ heals the paralytic. And that's mean he tells him, that forgives you your sins. What is he watching at this point? And apparently nothing yet, not just a phrase, your sins are forgiven to you. Nothing else happens, apparently. But there is one thing that happened on people's faces, who watched some of these people. They resented these words. And they just didn't hide those words. Especially since Christ is not just a psychologist, who looks at the people there, and some, in a consistent way, tries to guess their emotions. No, he is in heart Vegas. He sees what is in the heart of a person. And that's why Christ, looking at these people, says, but what is easier? Say, forgive you your sins. Or say, get up and walk. And what is easier here? I'll ask you, what's easier to say? Sins are forgiven, or stand up and walk? Are they saying goodbye? Yes, to say easier, right. Why is it easier? Because it is not clear. With sins they invisible outside people. You said sins are forgiven. Here comes a man to confess to a priest and tells him of his sins. Tells in detail. For example, tells how to him. His neighbor is hers. Neighbor caused damage. And told about it in detail. This all happens at confession. Seemingly, yes. And that's when one day, and I will give him a jury to our star chick. Facing the monument. You are. She's such a woman. She wasn't one, of course. A lot of these were. Who told him, in every detail? What does someone mean they're put damage on her? And how bad she lives from it? He listened to her, listened somehow, and says, you know what? I would pass a long life. Here is. And you know what life he lived? He was a young priest. Was he Akravet? He was created for believing, for preaching at that moment, officially banned from preaching. When he was handed over to his, that was really painful. And that's, he says, what I saw in my life. I didn't see bad people. Only one person sees, and that person is me myself. Understand? Because very often our story turns something opposite of history. When we shift the accents off ourselves. Because the sin is what we have committed. And in the aftermath of the century, we must bear for our sin. Which is expressed in our misfortunes in life, yes, and troubles of our sores. But we thus have in psychological, that we shift the accent from ourselves. What's here, man? He's guilty. I'm not guilty. What here? They looked at me the wrong way. The wrong thing did to me, and how I would suffer no longer for my sins. I don't see myself anymore. That's the main thing here. Danger. So, saying sins are forgiven is the easiest. Everyone understands because there's nothing behind it. Are saying goodbye, how to prove it, how to see it. Therefore, people were outraged because when God, in the first, can forgive sins, And since there is no way to verify this, it turns out that God, that man to himself, as if Jesus appropriates his place. For God, he stands as if in the place of God. That's what angered the Jews. But he continues on. Get up and walk. And that's it, get up and walk. It was a proposal. First cleansing from sin. And we will talk now. Why exactly in this bunch? Why is not reverse acting Christ? Why is he forgiving sins in the beginning? To man does not manifest himself in any way. Notice he forgives his sins. And here, not a word, no way mentioned. Didn't say anything. And happens as if. Apparently nothing happens, but inside is happening. Radio thing. Further. Moment purely technical. It means here is, we have a crowd of people who listens to the preacher, listens to the prophet. In the eyes of some, that is a great man. And in the eyes of others is God. God is man, Messiah. Come, people. Bring stretcher. There or some there means something like that. What could carry this man to bed on? And they take apart the roof of this house. Here is need to understand. That roof's there in the east, not like we have roofs. If we had to take our house roof apart of our house, then it is necessary to disassemble the roofing this system. House. That is impossible. This managed very quickly, but it took really long. But the houses in the east are different. But all of them, mostly houses, have a pointed roof, which you can walk on is in first. In the second, very often houses are completed further. Still in Israel, New generation, young builds her house. The fact that the earth is little expensive. This house like this can be 2 floors, 3 floors, but often there was this, that the poor lived in such conditions. What? That roof. She was just rated. She was some overlap of something made from the cheapest material, which was very easy to disassemble, and even if someone paid attention to it. But Ewang doesn't say it. You certainly saw. What? Is there something there? Yes, what is there some? We are stuffy. But it's not said. That is, it was easy to do. Why is the Lord watching the man in the beginning? From sin, and then from sickness. And this is already a theological moment. What is theology? In that, when man has sinned, by any sin, we sin every time. We should understand what exists. Law, unwritten law. But the law is inevitable. Consequence of sin is suffering. How do we know that? And why do we have to suffer? If we read, when, a long time ago, and maybe now it was revered, here's not too long ago, that first people who with sin were Adam and Eve. And here we are, acting in life like a school bully. Very often what is expressed in this, that is, we sin, often on hollow. We sin selflessly. By yourself. That happens sometimes with such, a little bit with such an element of some flow. Some pose, even such a social. How would affect people? Here, see how I am. How can I step over some? Social and religious. How can I do it all? Look and me as if nothing.